In the case of Nurse Lucky, in which he found out that there is some irregularity in the hospital where he is working. And as a good worker of this hospital, he needs to do something to address this problem, not just for himself to be good in the eyes of the owner, but also to make things better, and he needs to make a decision that will be okay to everyone. In ethical decision making, there are 7 steps to be considered, and first step of this is gathering of information. And by his investigation, he found out that there are some nurses who do not administer this expensive medication as ordered. They administer instead a placebo even if it was not ordered by the physician. They also charges the patient with the medicine even though they administer placebo. These extra vials are kept and later sold to other patients who needs it at half the price. The money is then divided among those who are involved. These occurrences are not recorded in the medication audit being conducted by nurse supervisor, because the nurse supervisor for this floor is no other than his brother, who is also involved in this case.
The second step would be identifying the stakeholders. People can be affected by the decision being made depending on their position in the case, whether they are primary or secondary stakeholders. As Lucky, the main actor of the case who carries all the burden due to his discovery, becomes a primary stakeholder. Moreover, his brother Chris is also a primary stakeholder due to the fact that he is the supervisor of all the nurses, and it is his duty to monitor and prevent this illegal transaction which he is also involved. The secondary would be the staff and the employees of the hospital and the patient, because whatever the decision will be, they will receive a lesser impact on the decision. All in all, there are 4 stakeholders identified. Lucky and his brother as a primary stakeholder, the staff and employees of the hospital and the patients become secondary stakeholders.
The third step in ethical decision making is to articulate the moral dilemma. The problem that bothers Lucky is whether to keep silence or inform the authority. He is torn between spilling the beans regarding to the misconduct of the under-the-table transaction of selling medication in a lower price of some nurses and the supervisor, who happens to be his brother, or to just pretend that he haven't seen or discovered this kind of scenario. His brother is also aware that Lucky knows about their illegal transaction, and it's a hard decision to tolerate that, since he is a beneficiary of his brother's doing, as it helps him to graduate because of that illegal activity that his brother did.
Step 4. List of alternatives. Number 1. You should just vote on the slips and try not to butt in others' business to maintain the hospital's reputation as well as with his brother. The second one. Tell the administration about the illegal happening in the hospital to maintain the integrity of the hospital. The third one. To only convince his brother to stop doing this illegal transaction to preserve the relationship. The fourth one. To inform the hospital through an anonymous gift in order to preserve his relationship with his brother and to maintain the integrity and professionalism in the workplace. The fifth one. To convince his brother to disclose this misconduct and foolishness that he had done to avoid future ambiguity. Through these alternatives, it will preserve the relationship, license, and the integrity of the hospital.
Step 5. Compare the alternatives. Reporting them is not just the only decision that I will consider, since there is a lot of options for us to solve the problem. Tolerating a mistake will just make another one. Thus, we can impose the consequences to those who set fault to impede those unrighteous deeds. However, telling the truth won't make you look like a good one. Thus, convincing his brother will give us a good outcome somehow. Since if he can persuade his brother, their bond would be at risk. and at the same time, those unrighteous deeds will be put to an end. Hence, we've gathered all the alternatives that we can and came up with the best ones, such as through convincing his brother to disclose the misconduct and foolishness that he has started to avoid future ambiguity. With this alternative, it will keep the relationship, their licenses, and the hospital's integrity. Or he should just button his lips and try not to butt in on others' businesses to maintain the hospital's reputation as well as with his brother. So that's all for the step 5, and now let's proceed to step 6.
The sixth step of ethical decision making is to weigh the consequences. The consequences should be fair at all times to the both parties. No one should be favored or exempted in the name of justice. But in Lucky's case, the positive one is to preserve his relationship with his brother, retain their license, preserve the integrity and the status of the hospital. This will avoid future ambiguity which caused by not following the physician's order and illegal selling of medication, and also to avoid imprisonment. But in the negative side, they will be terminated from work. They will experience struggle in finding a new job. Lucky will live his life full of conscience. The hospital will encounter lots of problems. Their license will be lost and last imprisonment. But at the end, we should choose the right decision even though we will encounter lots of punishment, because in every action, there is a consequence.
We are all fully responsible for our actions. Thus, we should think intelligently for us to have no remorse, mostly whenever our family is involved, since we can undo and take back the things that we already said and done. As we all know, medical staff's salary is not that big enough to sustain their needs and their family's needs. Others then side hustle in order to cope up with those expenses they incurred to avoid drawing with these deals. Even his brother's purpose in doing those things is reasonable. Still, it will not hide the fact that it's against hospital policy and constitute misconduct, which soon it could harm and threaten the lives of patients. And this should not be tolerated, as a hospital is a place which should heal people. If he chose to tell the truth, then he needs to sacrifice the relationship to his brothers and feel bad because his brother will face his consequences. But if he chose not to speak and save his relationship to his brother, then his conscience will haunt him for every transaction that his brothers do. So all in all, the first alternative will be the best solution, because through this, legal acts will be put to an end, and it will help also the hospital administration to strengthen their rules in order to preserve the integrity. The staffs who were involved could also speak about their side, why they have done such things, and this will help them to avoid being imprisoned due to their personal and valid reasons. Due to this, no license will be lost. Thank you.